Hello, creative spirits. Welcome to another shorter episode of your creative and magical life. These episodes are unedited. There's no music. It's just me talking at you, hoping to share something of value. This episode is a follow up to the previous episode that explored the chariot via a lovely interview with Hannah Levy. I hope you will check it out if you haven't heard it already. You don't have to have heard that episode to appreciate this one. But this one's meant to kind of apply some of what we explored about the chariot into your life as a creative person. So, to guide that exploration, I want to focus on two questions. The first one is, what is fueling your creative work or your creative project? And the second question is, how would you like to travel? How would you like to move yourself through this project? Those are questions that I think sprout from the chariot if we want to apply them to a creative life. So let's focus on the first question. What's fueling your creative work? And here I want us to think about the difference between external motivation and internal motivation. And external motivation can be powerful. It it is effective. We get a lot of it in life. It starts at home when our parents like what we do and when they don't like what we do. We start to figure out what they like and what they don't. And we want them to be happy, or we want to be rewarded, or we don't want them to be mad at us. And so, to varying degrees, under like a range of different dynamics, those things can become external motivators for us. We do things because we know our parents expect it, or they would approve of it. They will be proud of us if we do it. It continues in school where we get praise, we get awards, we get a sense of belonging if we make good grades, or if we dress a certain way or act a certain way. All of those things are external motivators. And then, of course, we get plenty of them in the workplace. Everything. I mean, hopefully, there are many of us who have done work where we felt eternally motivated to do a good job. We cared about what we were doing, we wanted to do well. Sometimes that internal motivation is not there. So, external motivation or the paycheck or not getting fired or whatever will provide the motivation for us to do something that we feel zero connection to, right? So, we get a lot of training in being externally motivated. But the thing with external motivation is that it kind of burns out. Like it has a shorter lifespan, I think, because it didn't come from us. It came from other people. So usually it doesn't align with what we would normally feel motivated by internally. And so then you have a conflict. This external motivation is at odds with your internal motivators, and something's going to break down eventually. So let's apply this to a creative project. And I'm going to invoke the example of the writer. And the goal this hypothetical writer, has for themselves is to get a book deal. They want to finish a book and they want to sell it. And then then it will be published and other things will happen. But they're very attached to this notion of having a book deal. That's very important to them. That's a perfectly legitimate thing to want. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting a book deal, nothing wrong at all. However, for our example, we're going to look at why the writer wants this book deal. So, some external reasons, maybe some external motivators, could be that this writer, and the writer may not be aware of this. I should point that out. Like, the writer may not be consciously even thinking that this is their reason. Sometimes it may occur to them, but it's just kind of like baked in to the whole thing. They may be taking for granted the fact that this is a motivator for them. Some of these things I'm about to list. So, one reason this writer could want a book deal is because they think it will validate them as a real writer. So, they've been writing for a long time, but they haven't published that much and they don't have a book deal. So, there's a story they have that they're not really a writer until they have a book deal. So, having this book deal would be the game changer where they could really say to someone at a party, I'm a writer, and they could be confident in it. They wouldn't be shrinking or shrugging or finishing the sentence like it's a question. They could just legit say, I'm a writer. Maybe the writer wants this book deal because they want to make money. They want to finally get paid for their writing. They've been writing a while, and, many writing gigs don't pay a lot. Even book deals don't pay a lot, most of them. But this writer thinks that getting that bigger paycheck would just be meaningful. It would finally satisfy this ache of being underpaid for so long. That's also, we all want to be paid fairly. That's not a bad reason to want a book deal. Maybe this writer wants the book deal because, and this is an example where they may not fully be aware of their motivation, the external motivation, but maybe they want this book deal because they think it will prove to their family that writing is a worthwhile pursuit for them. Like maybe their family has pushed them from a young age to be an engineer or be a lawyer or be a doctor or to do something, quote, practical with their life. But this person wanted to be a writer. They didn't want to become those other things. And they mostly believed that writing was a worthwhile pursuit, though it's hard to believe it 100% of the time when your family's telling you it's not true. But this writer thinks that if they get a book deal, they can finally say to their family, you never believed in me, but this publisher did. And these readers believe in me. And this just goes to show that you're wrong. And this will somehow alleviate this family dynamic of pressure and influence to become something that you're not. Maybe the writer's been working on this project for a long time. Maybe it's been years. They've been in and out of the project. They pick it up, they put it down. They get frustrated. Life gets in the way. And finishing the book and selling the book would mean to the writer that all of that was not a waste of time. So those are some externally motivating reasons. They're obviously coming from inside the writer, but the book deal is a vehicle for the writer to get something from the external world that they don't feel they have access to in themselves, like a sense of validation, a sense of belonging in their family, like a belief that just writing, even if it doesn't produce a book, is a worthwhile use of time. I just want you to notice how your body feels or how you feel when you listen to these external reasons. Just kind of check in when you think about if this were you as a writer wanting a book deal for these reasons, how would that feel inside of your body? All right. Now we're going to think about some internal reasons, some internal motivations that this writer could also have. None of these things are mutually exclusive, but the writer may have forgotten that these are internal motivations, or maybe these internal motivations are very much subjugated underneath the overarching motivation of the book deal. So some internal motivators for finishing a book could be simply feeling this compulsion to get a story out of you, to process some lived experience through your writing, and to move it from an internal place to an external place where it can be, for one thing, outside of you, finally, It no longer just exists inside your psychology, inside your mind, your spirit. It finally exists as something else. And that something else is relatable to other people. Other people could find it, they could hear it, they could read it, they could experience it in some way and have a meaningful experience with it. But primarily, this internal motivation is this like compulsion, this need, this urge to move a story from inside to outside. Another internal motivation could be that the writer is just really curious about the characters that keep showing up for them. These characters that are populating their story, they meander into the writer's daydreams. They show up in the writer's dreams at night. When the writer's walking or running or taking a shower, they're thinking about the characters, they're thinking about the world of the story that they've created. And the writer has a really deep curiosity for who these characters are, how the characters continue to reveal themselves to the writer, how the characters surprise them as the story continues to unfold, how these characters will grow and change or possibly refuse to change. Like the writer just has this curiosity to see what's going to happen to all these characters that have shown up in their life, almost like real people. So they want to find out. Another internal motivation could be that the writer wants to know how they will change as a result of writing and finishing a book and possibly publishing the book too. That brings me to this like important thing about all of this, that like wanting a book deal or the book deal part is just a very like small part of the whole process, especially for a writer who's going to spend a few years working on a book. That process matters too. And a lot is happening in that process for the writer. They're refining their skills, they're developing their ideas, they're troubleshooting things, they're solving problems, they're developing their voice, they're developing their style. And then the book deal happens, but then there's also like things on the other side of the book deal, the sharing of the book, the marketing of the book. And so to just make this journey about the book deal really kind of flushes down the toilet the rest of a very rich experience of writing a book. So this writer could want to find out how they will change if they finish this project. Like what kind of how much will their writing improve? How many new skills will they have? How much better at writing plot might they be than when they started, or dialogue, or whatever the case? But also, how will they grow as a person? How will they be different because they followed through on this wish, to this desire, this feeling, this need to write a book? Maybe the writer is interested in empathizing and cultivating compassion, and they like to do that through writing. Maybe writing allows them to imagine people who are different from themselves, to engage with people who are different, and therefore cultivate compassion. Like writing makes them more human, and that's why they do it. And maybe there's the desire, I don't know if this was kind of baked into a previous example, but just to share an experience because you think it could help someone else. Like you went through something really difficult. It was very meaningful to you as you navigated through that painful experience, and also how to recover yourself on the other side of it. That may be something profound for you. And you want to offer the story as one of hope or as an example, or just because someone who's gone through something else may find it and suddenly feel less alone and way more understood. Last example, and I'm sure there are many more that could be named, but maybe the writer has a perspective or a point of view that they don't see being talked about in the world. Like they go through life, they notice something, they're interested in something, And because of their unique brain and their unique positionality and their unique creativity, they have a perspective, an idea that no one else is talking about. And instead of thinking, well, I guess if no one else is talking about it, it's probably stupid, they're thinking, no one else is talking about it, but people need to talk about this. So I'm going to write about it and I'm going to put out a narrative or a perspective or a possibility that maybe other people will find refreshing and might change the conversation. So those are all more internally based motivations in our hypothetical example of the writer who wants a book deal. And as you hear these internal motivations, I wonder how that feels in your body. If you imagine yourself as the writer motivated by these different internal factors, how does that feel? To me, when I think about or talk about the external motivators, I feel a kind of emptying out. Things feel more like my body feels more like a shell, or I get this feeling like, wow, to go after the book deal with that motivation would mean like every day I have to wake up angry or really attached to something, working out a certain way. And so every sentence I write is going to be a big deal. Every chapter I finish, it's got to be good. It's got to be good enough. And so there would be this struggle in the writer to always evaluate against the external motivation and expectation. Is it going to be enough? Is it good enough? Will publishers take this? Are publishers taking this now, this kind of book? And so that would always, like, the external world in that case is always in your brain or your projection of it, right? As you're trying to create, it's like, especially the one with your family. If you need this book deal so your family can like really appreciate that writing is valuable, then you've got this family that's disappointed you always living in your mind while you're writing a book. And that just sounds super shitty. Versus when I think about these internal motivators, I get this feeling of fullness. I get this feeling of like energizing throughout my body. I feel this sense that this motivator, this fuel could, for my project to like get me through what I'm trying to do, that could actually take me far. Like that could help me create discipline because there's curiosity. There's like a desire that is centered in um either like love for myself or love for the world. Like I want this book to be in some way an act of service. And again, I'm not saying the two things, like wanting a book deal is an indicator that you don't think of writing as an act of service. I don't want any like writer martyrs up in here. Like we just write books to serve the world. Like writers should be paid. They should be valued. What writers do is incredibly important. What all artists do is so valuable and essential to keeping humans in connection with humanity, the humanity of being human. And we live in a world that undervalues artists all the time, which is why we get caught up in these external motivators. But I just think that when we have an internal motivation that's really true for us, even if we want to see a book deal at the end, that's going to take us further. So I'm thinking of that writer in the Chariot. If they're trying to chase down a book deal to prove something, it's just going to be a really grueling journey. But if they're moving forward into the world from a place of curiosity or more connected with a desire that truly exists within them, that's not about lacking something, but is about like fullness of heart or fullness of desire or fullness of curiosity, that journey is going to be way more fun, way more adventurous, right? So if you are in the midst of a project and you want to check in with yourself about what's motivating you, I would recommend taking a piece of paper or taking a page or 2 pages in your journal. And on one side, list all of the external motivations you can think of that are driving you forward in the project. Think about the goal that you want to see at the end of finishing. And then think about, why is that the goal that you have? Are there any motivations that would fall under the external motivation category? And then on a separate part of your page or on the opposite page, think about all of the internal motivations that may be driving you. You may find that you can come up with a couple external motivators more quickly. I don't know if that's true. That's a suspicion. And you may think, wow, shit, I don't have enough juicy internal motivation, but I think you do. I think you just need to connect with it and give it some time to surface. So if this is a exercise that you try in your journal, I would leave it as an open exploration for a week or longer and see what else comes up for you when you ask yourself, how am I internally motivated? Like, one internal motivation can just be like, it feels really amazing to write another scene in my novel. Like, that feeling of finishing a scene is totally an internal motivation. So let yourself come up, like, they can be big, kind of writ large motivators. Like, I want to help people understand what it's like to raise kids while having ADHD and autism, for example. Like, you want to be able to help people who are doing that, or you want more people to understand what that experience is like. That's a big internal motivation, but there may be other smaller ones. And I want you to just kind of come up with as many as you can think of and see what's there. And when you feel like your list is pretty full, I would just do a little inventory, like which of the motivations on either of those 2 pages are the ones you thought were the main motivator, like the one that was taking up the most stage time, the one that was getting the most attention from you, the one you were leaning on the most. And then also look, like, are there some other good ones in here that I could maybe bring up to the surface that I can connect with more often to motivate me instead of this external motivator that I keep leaning on? So that's the inquiry for question 1. What is fueling your creative work? And then I want to talk a little bit about how you want to travel. So in my new book, which I did not get a book deal for, I just made it myself. And I'm selling it myself right now. And I see why people want a book deal. But I love this experiment. Like, I'm glad I'm figuring this out. But in this new book, for the Chariot, it's a workbook, it's a playbook, it's a coloring book. It's got a journaling prompt for every card in the tarot. And these journaling prompts are meant to help you inquire with yourself, just as I've done with you in the previous question. All of the prompts are meant to help you kind of look at how you do things, why you do things, what do you want, what's supporting you, what are your values, etc. So in the prompt for the Chariot, one part of the exploration for the Chariot, there's this table I made. And on the left column, there's a question. And in the right column, you fill out your answers. So this one's asking you about the journey. And the first question is, what kind of container or vehicle would suit you for this journey? So your journey could be writing a book. It could be finishing a series of paintings. It could be a one-woman show you're trying to create. I don't know. As I was filling out these prompts, I was thinking about the journey I'm on to share this book with the world and to help more people know about it so they can get it if they want it, if they think it would help them. So that's what I'm thinking about. How do I like share about this book in a way that feels good to me, that isn't just about getting maximum sales or making maximum money or selling X amount of books, but how can I share about this book? Because it's kind of unique. It's not, uh, yeah, it's just a little different. It's like, it's filled with a lot of questions. They're all connected to tarot. It's to help you learn tarot, but it's also to help you learn about yourself. So it takes a little explaining. And I don't always feel like I have the energy to like be broadcasting, even though I'm doing that right now, to everyone what the book is and how it works. So this question, what kind of container or vehicle would suit me? I noticed that when I started to get into this question, I was starting to have a lot of fun. I started imagining myself in a like convertible car that is covered with tarot cards and maybe like some silvery moons, maybe some owls. I'm from Houston, where they have an art car parade. I'll link to some images of an art car in the show notes. But I started kind of using that for inspiration. So I'm imagining this convertible. It's also got tree branches growing out of it. There's like birds perched in the branches sometimes. Maybe there's a garden growing on the trunk. This is not a fast moving vehicle. It doesn't run on fossil fuels either. Um, it moves on some sustainable resource that I haven't invented yet. But I'm imagining myself like roaming around town or someplace in this weird ass car. And when people are curious about the car, I can tell them what it's about and I can tell them other things. And maybe then we can talk about the book. Maybe they'd be interested. I'm obviously not going to create that car or buy that car and start roaming around town, though I think it'd be really fun to be that weirdo. But just thinking about what I'm doing, trying to share the book as me traveling in this weird car automatically makes the whole thing more fun for me. So this is a question you can ask yourself. What kind of container or vehicle would suit you for this journey? And I recommend you get as weird and wild with answering that question. Have as much fun with it as you want to. Be metaphorical, be abstract, be impossible, play around. Or you may want to be more practical. Like you may need a different kind of vehicle. You may need like a writing buddy for a while, or you may need a workshop or a teacher or a coach. Or maybe you're just thinking about the container you need for the content you're making. You know, do you need a certain size canvas? Do you need a certain kind of practice space? Do you imagine a certain stage for where your script or your play could come to life? So answer it in whatever way feels true and important. And then here's a few more questions to think about how you want to travel. The first is, what kind of emotional fuel will support you along the way? So in my weird convertible, my weird witchy convertible, emotionally, I want to feel a sense of curiosity. I want to feel connection with other people. I want to be laughing. I want to feel a sense of lightness, a sense of ease, a sense of presence, a sense of possibility. So, what emotions will be good fuel for your journey? Do you need to tap into some angst? Do you need to tap into the wildest parts of your imagination? I'm not sure if that's an emotion, but um, maybe you need to tap into a sense of joy. Maybe you need to tap into sadness. Like, what are the different emotions you might need to draw on at different times to move you forward? And then what kind of resources will you need as you travel from here to there? So for me, I was thinking, I do need to rest. I do need to play. I do need to be creative. I do need a strategy, but it doesn't have to be like a year-long strategy. I can come up with a strategy that's going to take me a few months down the road and then see if I want to change things, see if I need a new strategy. I'm going to need snacks. I'm going to need dreams. I'm going to need tarot cards. And I'm going to need a willingness to reach out and to share from my heart. Next question. What kind of thoughts will you need as you travel from here to there? And here I want you to think specifically in like a full sentence, like at the actual thought you might need to think. What are some thoughts that would be helpful for you to think as you are traveling? So the thought, if I don't get this book deal, I'll never be a writer, is not going to be a very supportive thought. It's not going to feel good because then everything is riding on whether or not you get this thing. So maybe you need thoughts that contain possibility or neutrality. I'm open to having fun on this journey. I'm curious about what's going to happen to me as I continue to write this book. So any kind of thought that would be just feel good if you could think it. Two more questions to go. The next one, how might your ancestors provide support along the way? So these can be ancestors you know about, ancestors you don't know about. These could be even ancestors in the realm of creativity that you are not related to, but who have done creative work that's inspired you. Maybe they might be throwing some seeds down from the astral plane or opening some doors or helping you out in some way, bringing you ideas. These questions are meant to be open for wild imagination. So you don't need to be practical when you're thinking about the answers in every case. And then the final question is, what will make this journey meaningful for you beyond the outcome? So that kind of comes back to the internal motivation. As you go through this journey, what's going to make it worthwhile? For me, maybe I wouldn't sell a lot of books, but I'm out there in my weird car meeting a bunch of cool people and having really interesting conversations and learning about how they relate to magic or creativity or what their favorite bird is or what their favorite tarot card is. Or maybe a couple people would randomly give me some really great snacks. And I would just remember that for the rest of my life for whatever reason. So think of other things that can make this journey meaningful for you. And obviously, that's kind of like, again, in the metaphor of my weird car, but some of those things can happen and are already happening. I'm having really interesting conversations with people. I'm getting to know people in a different way. It's not just about like me sharing about this thing. It's also me just being present in the journey of trying to share the thing and being open to the wondrous things that could happen, the unexpected things, the surprises that will make it meaningful for me. I will put these questions and these prompts in the show notes so that you can revisit them if you want to. And of course, that book I keep talking about is available and you can get it if it feels interesting to you. There's a discount code for podcast listeners also in the show notes. You can find it there. And then if you are someone who struggles to connect with the internal motivation, or if you've been really focused on the external motivation for a long time and you don't know how to change that, I would love to support you I am also a creativity coach, and I work with folks one-on-one to help them reframe and rebuild and shift their relationship with creativity. And I would love to support you too. So you can find out more about that on typewritertarot.com. And we'll be back soon with a new episode that will be edited and will have music. I will talk to you then.